If you want to check Barbara out, her video is going to pop up there. But didn't like this at all. Hello everyone, and thanks so much for tuning into my channel. Now, before I move into this week's topic, you already know what I'm going to do because it's what I always do. If you like this video, please be sure to click like. And if you haven't already done so, I don't know what you're waiting for, please be sure to subscribe to my channel. The final thing, I need you to bell me. Make sure you click that bell because then you will get notifications every time I post new content, and I know you want notifications every time I post new content. I have also consolidated everything into one site, which is so exciting for me, and I'm sure it is so exciting for you. So you can go ahead and you can check me out on my website at www.shikahenley.com. Again, that is www.shikahenley.com. So this week's topic is actually called You Too Are a Special Education Teacher. Now, before we move into this, I do want to preface by saying I recognize and I understand that special education teachers have a special skill set. They understand all the laws that are in place to help to protect and support special education students, and they also have a different understanding of differentiation. That's something that they focus in on. However, just because you're not a special education teacher does not mean that you aren't a special education teacher, that you are supporting all students in your classroom. And so in this particular video, I'm going to just highlight some different things you can do in your classroom to help support all students in your class. I also want to add that this blog was co-written with Barbara, and many of you have seen Barbara's video about parent communication. A link will pop up above so that if you want to check that out, you can check that out. But she did definitely help support in writing this particular blog, so be sure to check her out as well. Okay, number one. Now, number one is going to be received, I know, strangely. I knew that when I wrote it. But number one is to co-teach. So many of us have co-teachers in our classrooms, and this goes both ways. If you have a co-teacher in your classroom, you should be just that, co-teachers. Okay, you shouldn't isolate tasks. It shouldn't be, well, I'm going to help these students with this, or you can help these students with that. But it should really be you two coming together to look at the lessons, to look at the units, to actually plan all of those things together so that everything is interwoven in. It should be a seamless process. Your co-teacher should be able to stand in front of the class and instruct just as you should be able to stand in front of the class and instruct, so that everything is seamless and that all kids are being supported. Because one thing that people fail to realize is students learn from both of you. There are going to be ways that you explain things that will be helpful for other students, and there will be things that your co-teacher will explain things that will be helpful for students as well. So if you are not really partners in planning, then that's already going to be to the detriment of your students. So if you have a co-teacher, make sure that you really are co-teaching, that you really are planning those lessons together so that you're better supporting your students. Number two, make sure you're incorporating visual aids. And there are many teachers who are still doing this, but they're still teaching things lecture style. They kind of stand up and then they talk about everything that needs to be explained. They just go through everything at the board. And then it's an expectation that kids are just gonna, boom, go. You need to incorporate visual aids to go along with whatever it is that you're explaining. And visual aids is not simply, oh, I'm going to make a PowerPoint. A PowerPoint is a type of visual aid, but you want to make sure that kids see graphs. You want to make sure that there are actual graphic organizers that they can look at to help put all their information together. As a person who is a visual learner, hearing things does not help me. As an adult now, I have to explain it to my students oftentimes. If you try to explain something to me or if you read something to me, I'm still going to struggle with understanding it. But if I can see it written, if I can see the graph, if I can have a visual there, then it makes it much easier for me to understand. So if you're not incorporating visuals, you need to be sure to incorporate visuals, because these visual aids are definitely going to support all students in your classroom. Number three, Review and revisit information. So sometimes when we're just really in the hustle and bustle of things, we teach things and we don't revisit them. And sometimes we think of it on a broader scale, like, oh, this is a skill that I taught in October and now it's February. But it doesn't have to be on that broader scale. It can legitimately be, this is something that I taught yesterday. This is something that I went over in the beginning of this lesson. You need to make sure that you can always revisit things that are being taught. So as an example, when I would teach thesis statements, I would teach it in a very formulaic way so that kids could easily plug and chug things in so that they can eventually start to develop much richer thesis statements. However, I never let that go. So even whenever we're writing essays, I will always make sure I incorporated the thesis statement format, and I would incorporate like an introduction format, and I would tell students, you know, if this is something that you need, cool, use it. If this is something that you don't need, then that's okay, you don't have to use it. And what I found was if I didn't do that one time or another, there would be a few students who would say, oh, you didn't incorporate that, I needed that really helped me. And it wasn't that they couldn't access the content, but they still needed to have that presented to them so that they could revisit and review things that I had taught. So if you are not incorporating that into your daily instruction, into your weekly instruction, if you aren't making sure that kids can always revisit a concept or a skill or a formula that you've presented to them, start incorporating that into your instruction, into your worksheets, because just that simple task will enable so many students to be able to look back and just kind of move forward on their own. Number 4, which is my personal favorite, is chunking. Are you chunking your assignments? Are you chunking the processes and procedures? If you're teaching math and there are several steps to solving a problem, several steps to finding a solution to something, are you chunking that? Is it step 1, which is clearly labeled and there's clearly identified a space where students have to work on step 1 and that process, and then step 2 where they have to move on to the next process? Simply chunking things into steps makes things seem so much more accessible, so much clearer, so much more clearer to students. This is something that I would do with reading. If I had students and they had to write a summary on a 4-paragraph article, I would take the 4 paragraphs and I would literally chunk them and put them into boxes. So students could look at each box and maybe write a summary, 1-sentence summary of each paragraph. And then at the end, they could put them all together to come up with one long summary. But those chunks made things seem much more achievable, and it wasn't as overwhelming looking at so much text. It's not going to be overwhelming looking at so many parts of an equation that needs to be solved. So if you're not chunking, be sure to chunk. Number 5, use various mediums. So this is something that people also don't realize. You may have a student who really struggles with reading because perhaps it's a decoding thing, or you may just have students who struggle with reading because they struggle with reading. One thing that I would always do as an English teacher, however, these are things that transfer over into all different disciplines. I would make sure I incorporated art. I would make sure I incorporated music, because I realized that looking at a visual could tell the same story that a story would tell. And if I have students who need to write an essay on theme, or you can write an essay on theme if we're looking at a graphic novel. You can write an essay about an author's point of view if you're still looking at an art piece. So it's important that you take into account that there are all these different mediums that you can use that will be accessible to students. So a student may not be able to read a 10-page short story. However, they can look at a very complex art piece and they can pull all of those pieces together, because really what you're looking for is you're looking for that process so that they can actually critically think about something. So again, if you are incorporating different mediums, if you aren't adding that into your instruction, begin adding that to your instruction, because it's going to make things so much more accessible for all students in your classroom. And number 6, vary your final products. So you got to think about it. Is your final product always an exam? Is it always an essay? Give students options. One of the coolest options that I've just always liked is the bingo method. So you give students a sheet that looks like a bingo sheet, and they have all of these. It has all these different some assessments on it, ways to just assess whether or not kids have acquired the skills or they understand the knowledge or the content. And what students can do is they can pick 2 or 3 things from this particular list, or they can pick enough so that it actually hits, it makes a bingo. So it's a straight line, or it's a line across, or whatever it may be. But all of the different things on it address different learning modalities. So it might be, you need to write a song, you need to draw a picture, you need to record something, you need to make something. So students don't have to just do one thing. They don't just have one medium that they're using, because there are some students who, again, they may need things that are scribed for them. And if you don't necessarily have someone there to scribe it, they still can draw something for you that'll still illustrate what it is that you need explained. So please be sure to provide students with those options. Let them turn in different final products, because that same final product isn't going to work for all of your kids. Okay, it is recap time. So I'm going to quickly recap those 6 tips to help you if you are a general education teacher, and really you are a special education teacher as well, even if you are a general education teacher. So these are 6 things to take into consideration, or 6 things that will help you quickly. Number 1, co-teach. If you and your co-teacher are not really utilizing their relationship, start utilizing their relationship. You are 2 educators in that classroom, and you 2 should be owning that space. Number 2, you need to incorporate visual aids. If there are no visuals, if you're lecturing, of course you're going to lose lots and lots of students, not just students who are your diverse learners. Make sure it's something that they can see and that they can break down, and it's easier for them to understand once they're visual, once they can visualize it, because even I am a visual learner, and listening to someone is not very helpful for me. Number 3, review and revisit. Are you constantly reviewing and revisiting things? Or are you just explaining things and saying, okay, everybody, go. This is what we have to do. You should know how to do it now. Always allow students, provide students a space where they can go back and revisit steps and procedures to help them accomplish tasks or understand things. Number 4, chunk. Don't present a huge thing to something, but divide things into steps. Chunk things out. If it's readings, chunk it up. Put it in tables so that it's easier to access. My apologies. Number 5, use various mediums. So make sure you're using art, make sure you're using music, make sure you're using all these different things to help these different modalities to support students with learning. And number 6, vary your final products. It shouldn't just be one way that kids are doing things. Allow kids options, because we're all creative people. If I can't write something down, I may be able to draw something. I may be able to perform it. I may be able to explain it. But give me the option to do that. Don't just give me one option and say if I didn't do it, then I just didn't do well on it. So thanks so much for tuning in this week. You already know, if you haven't liked this video and you liked it, click like. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please be sure to subscribe to my channel, and make sure you hit that bell so that you get notifications every time there is new content. If you need to contact me, you can contact it via my new and improved website, www.shikahenley.com. And thanks again for tuning in. It was great seeing you, and I look forward to seeing you next time.